Hey guys. So I wanted to share with you what we have going on in the garden. I live in Central Florida, Zone 9B. The weather out here is a little different from, in my opinion, anywhere in the United States. It's a little crazy. In the springtime, we don't have a lot of rain, so it's just very droughty, if that's even a word. In the summertime, we get rain almost every single day, crazy monsoons, storms, hurricanes sometimes. And in the winter, we have, since I'm in zone 9B, we get a couple more days of frost than, say, South Florida. So this year we had about 4 or 5 nights of frost. And growing initially in containers, it was easy because on those nights you can just simply move the containers inside the house, or in our case, in the shed, and it protect our crops. However, this year we decided to expand and start in a smaller space, a smaller area of the yard behind our shed, which gets the most amount of sun, and decided to get cattle panels, 2 of them, so that we can grow vertical since we're growing a lot of crops that are very tall and viney. And so we figured this would work the best. I got the soil tested. Well, I didn't really test it, but I tested it by planting certain things in the ground and they're growing just fine. What we did was we amended the soil. We added some compost to it and a few other goods, bone meal, blood meal, everything's organic. And things seem to be growing very well. So we still have our containers in ground, but we have these 2 cattle panels now, and I wanted to share with you how we got them installed and how easy it is to get started, even if you have a small space. So here's what we have going on. Here we have this shed, and to give you a perspective on the space, here's the fence line, the shed, and the 2 cattle panels that were just recently installed. Still in process of removing some of this grass, but we're going little by little here. I have beans growing up these trellises, and then we are actually going to grow passion fruit along here. So it'll get woven through and grow over this trellis. Here are some of the containers that we started with that we still have crops growing in, and I'll leave them in the containers. I won't transplant them into the ground. The way this cattle panel was installed was we basically arched it over and secured them with T-posts. I only had 2 of the 5.5-foot T-posts for one of the sides here. And on this one, I ran out of T-posts and I didn't want to go back to the store. So I had already on this property an 8-foot T-post that we drove into the ground. It's a lot stronger. So we went ahead and just used that and secured the panels with metal wiring. I've got my little hummingbird feeder here. And then here is the other cattle panel. This one we left it full length and we installed it a little higher off the ground. This is 16 feet long by a little over 4 feet tall. But I wanted more height, so we installed it above the ground. And we secured the cattle panel with 3 5.5-foot posts. Each panel was about $25 at Tractor Supply, and the posts were about $5-6 each. I have some watermelons started here, and as they grow they will get woven up and the melons will be secured with either t-shirts or some type of fabric that I can support the weight of the watermelon with so that they don't fall, since we're growing vertical. I have bush beans down here. We've got some herbs. Over here we have a squash plant. We've got some young tomato plants here. These are the bigger beefsteak tomatoes, which I thought I'd try this year. I haven't tried them because they grow very tall. We've got eggplant, peppers, and these tomatoes are the ones that I actually started in containers, but being new to gardening and not doing my proper research, I didn't realize that there are indeterminate and determinate tomato plants. So indeterminate, there's no determined size. They will actually just grow like a vine. And that's what I had here. So I transplanted them after I realized that staking them in these 5-gallon containers probably wasn't a good idea for long term. So I transplanted them here, and they went through a little bit of a shock, but they seem to have recovered or are recovering pretty nicely. And we just harvested some tomatoes this morning, but there are more flowers forming, and each flower becomes a tomato. We've got our mulberry tree here, our cherry tree with a nice little mess in the back. This cherry tree should not be in a fabric container because the roots will just break right through the container. So this will be transplanted into the ground very shortly. And then of course we've got the containers. So pretty straightforward. We've got a papaya tree or plant. They're not technically trees, they're actually plants started that I'm going to transplant into the ground now that we should be over all of our frost. And of course our banana that must be transplanted very soon. It's also in a fabric container, which is not recommended for long term because the roots will just kind of break out and it grows too big. And there you have it. So I will post another video in about 2 or 3 weeks just to update you on the progress of these plants that just came in or that were just transplanted recently. And I'll share what works, what doesn't work, but it's pretty easy to get started. It's really not a huge investment. It just takes a little bit of time and patience, and you guys can be growing as well in your small space. Hope this was helpful.